As you walked in, most of you when you walked in, unless you were really early, saw that there was a table out there in the foyer, and you can see a brochure that can help you better pray for your missionaries. And also, there's magazines out there, and you're welcome to sign up for a 6-month free subscription. There's a couple different ones. This one explains more about AFM work, and it gives some details and whatever. And this is the monthly magazine that we like to write for, or not, but we write for them anyways. After you've been there for a long time, sometimes you run out of stories. So anyways, and so my husband and I, this is my husband Fidel. Fidel comes from Benin, West Africa, and I've been working there for 25 years. Fidel, he grew up in Benin, but he grew up in the southern part, which is different than where we're working. You can go ahead and start that PowerPoint presentation. There you go. And so he grew up in the southern part of Benin, and we are working up in the northern part of Benin. So Adventist Frontier Missions is an organization that works closely with the local missions where the projects are situated. An organization where the missionaries are funded through private funds. An organization that works to prepare people to meet their God, prepare them for the soon return of our Lord Jesus Christ. Teaching them mainstream SDA doctrine. Reaching people groups that have little or very little Adventist presence, and starting Adventist churches. That's what we call church planting. Okay, so here's the map of Africa, and we're over here in the little country of Benin, between Nigeria and Togo. Everybody seems to know Togo and Benin, and Togo and Nigeria. Nobody seems to know where Benin is. So here's the country of Benin, and we're up in this area up here. So Fidel comes from down here. And we have 53 different language groups in that area, in that little tiny country. It's about the size of Pennsylvania, since you all know the size of Pennsylvania. I don't either. Never been there. Okay, so anyway, so there we are up in Tangeta. Here, when I started working, I was in this town down here, and then when we got married, we moved to a new project. When we got to that project, there was nothing there. There was no churches, nothing. Everybody said you can't work there. People had been there, and nobody had been able to do any work there. Wrong one, sorry. Get my buttons right. And here now, we've been there now working since 2016. And there are now 6 groups there. Where these arrows are, that's where the churches are, or the groups that are there now. So we've been working there, and that is where we're working at the instant. Myself and my husband. And this is our nephew, Abraham, who lives with us. He's 13, but he wasn't able to get here because of visa and passport issues, mostly passport issues. When we were here in 2022, we weren't able to come here. We had a plan to come to this church, but then I don't remember what the problem was that we never made it. In any case, I think it was a scheduling issue, or I don't remember. In any case, so then we went back home, and we had problems with jihadist attack in the area. The Al-Qaeda wants to come in and try to take over. They had been already in Mali and Burkina Faso, and we have a border with them, and so they kept trying to come in, and they started attacking the police station that was only like 15 minutes from our house. So when they did the second time, we left. I left to go south 25 miles or so to the town of Natitingou, where I had been before. And we rented a house there. He's still on the project. I am still in Nati, and he's on the project in our house in Tangeta. We have built a house. We have a farm there and everything, which you'll see later. And since I had been there before, we were able to reconnect with young people there that are no longer young people. They are now young adults, and they grew up. So here's when they were here. There's him now. He wasn't even in the picture. I mean, he was there, but he wasn't in that picture. And they all got big, so I started working with the Pathfinders. I had been working with them before, so here's this one when I was there before. He got to be a big boy, and he also grew up, and they are the leaders now of the Pathfinders in Natitingou. So one of the things that I did a lot of work with was the Adventures Club, and we were working with one of the short-term missionaries called Bruna, and she's from Brazil. So she decided that we would work on the Adventure Club together because she was working on getting the documents together. I don't know any of you who have worked with the Adventures, but it involves a lot of parental involvement. But over there, parental involvement is not. So we had to work out the documents so that it would be something that someone could teach to the kids. So it was rewritten basically so that it would work in our culture. So when she got finished writing it, she gave it to me to look through the French and make sure that it was semi-decently understandable and using words that could be understood. So we went through it, and then they all decided they decided that we were going to do all of the classes, all 6 classes of adventures in 2.5 weeks. So we did. We did manage to get them all done, and we finished them up. And here you can see we're all lined up with all the patches and got them all done. We finished that up and got all the classes finished and ready to teach, basically. So what we did, we didn't just do the class. We actually treated it and the fact that you wanted to teach it. So we got it all figured out and got the things printed out, and everybody did it separately so that everybody was doing their own work. And then we don't just go to the store and buy patches. You have to actually make the patches if you're going to have them. So we found a place where we could print on fabric, and then I ended up with it, so I had to sew around all the patches with fabric so that the backing would stay on. And so anyways, and then you have to cut them all out too. So anyways, and then you have to sew them on. So we did all that in 2.5 weeks. And then we did the program to invest us as Master Guide, but then we were there, they said, well, you haven't done Master Guide yet. I said, okay, fine. So anyways, the next 2.5 weeks was doing Master Guide. So I did Master Guide in 2.5 weeks, all the whole class of Master Guide. And yes, it's the same Master Guide that's for the Pathfinder Club. So it's not different. And so we finished that in 2.5 weeks. That's thanks to the fact that I had already done a lot of camping when I was younger. So I was able to do all the camping 1, 2, 3, 4 in 2.5 weeks because I already done all the camping part. I just had to do the other parts. Anyway, so got through that, and that gave us that. So then I became one of the master guides that's in that area, the whole northern part, because the other master guide that was there, he actually went to Cameroon to go become a pastor. So I was the only master guide that was up in that area. So there's one other master guide, but he's not in that area. So he kind of directs the whole program, but then I'm the chief master guide for adventures especially. So here's some of the pictures from the Adventures Club. This guy was born more or less when I arrived in Benin, but he was the master's guide. I mean, he was the adventures teacher, leader for that class, and he went off to university, so it fell on me now to do everybody. And here's some, pictures of the kids doing their adventurous stuff. As part of the classes asked that you read a lot of books on certain topics for adventures. Well, finding books in French is kind of hard, especially we don't really have a library there. There's supposed to be a library, but it's never open. And so we use videos thanks to COVID. They put lots of things online in French, so anything that's not like church related is online, so they have it ready to go. And we don't have any tables, so you can see we just kind of put the benches together to make tables. And that's how we continue. Now, for the Pathfinders, I continue to work with the Pathfinders as well. I'm not their leader, but I am there as the adult supervisor variety, because the leaders are the same age as the Pathfinders. So I'm just kind of like there to calm the tempers when it goes up. Anyway, so we get patches, for Pathfinders, we get patches from other places sometimes. And since they come in lumps, they also come all mixed up. So this is Martin trying to find patches that he wanted for his group. And I said, well, you can just sort them while you're at it. So he's sorting them and putting them in plastic bags so they're sort of like together with others of their like. Now we don't have we can't just buy flags, so if you want a flag, you got to make it. So Bruna cut out all the pieces and she brought them to me and said, can you sew this? So I sewed it. Those letters are very hard to sew. You don't know how many times I ripped them out to start over. And when you want to put the patches on, we have the magical called the stapler to put them on. It's very fast and it doesn't take long to put them on. So you just staple them on and get them on there. Now we had a camp out here recently, and that was for the whole district area, for the whole northern district area that we have. And we put it all together. And God got us a nice place. We were supposed to do it at the high school, but then the government decided that they were going to make rules that you can't do any of those kind of things at the high school, kind of like you do here. So, but anyways, God provided us with a nice place that was all enclosed. It was a real good protection for us. We cannot do any camp outs anywhere because of the whole Al-Qaeda jihadist thing. If you have any camping anywhere, police will come and shoot, and then they'll ask questions later. So we don't do any camping out. And here it was a nice place for us to do. They did not camp out. They actually slept in rooms. But anyways, it was as good as we got. And so then we had the Sabbath ceremony for putting the scarf on. What do you call that in English? Investiture. Is that what it is, still investiture? Okay, so we did an investiture, and we were trying to do candles. Well, it was very windy. We never did get them lit. So we imagined that they were lit, and I gave my little spiel on candles that weren't lit. And anyway, so there's the other people that are the leaders of that area. Wrong, I keep poking over there, and then it doesn't turn. We had about 70 people that we had to feed on Sabbath. So this was the big old pot that we cooked our yin yams in. Yin yams are a big root about this big. You just peel them, chop them up, and boil them. And then they're eaten with salt and oil and hot chili. So that was the first pot of the food for everybody. And it worked pretty well. I chose that meal because it's the easiest and the least amount of work. We don't have refrigeration or anything, so you have to cook it at the time. And then in the afternoon, we did 9 stations of different things that you're supposed to complete for your classes. Those who are in Pathfinders will probably remember and know these different things that you have to learn. One of them is starting a fire with 1 match. How many have done that already? Start the fire with 1 match with natural material, no plastic bags. So, and it was a little more challenging, and these guys are professionals. They do it every day in their life. That's how they start fires to eat with. So if you don't start a fire, you don't eat. So they're quite capable of starting fires under all kinds of adverse conditions. We had rain the night before, and it was windy during that time when they were trying to light, but they all managed to do it. And then they did semaphore flags. And one of the things that you're supposed to learn for Pathfinders is the semi-flag alphabet. I cut them out, the triangles, and they had to sew them together by hand. Basically because my sewing machine was dead at that point, so I decided they could sew it themselves. And then they did their thing and learned the alphabet too while they were at it in 20 minutes. And then another thing they have to do is set up a tent. We don't have any regular tents, so we make tents out of like sacks that are made for carrying grain. And then we cut them up, and we usually put 4 together, sew them together, and they make a big tent, like a tarp kind of thing. And then you have to find the sticks. But we found the sticks for them, because in 20 minutes you can't go find the sticks and everything. Sticks are not easy to find because everybody uses them for firewood. So anyways, we found the sticks, and then they had to tie them together to make the frame for the tents. And these are the tents that they use when they go camping. And then what to do when you're lost. One of the things that you all have to learn for Pathfinders, what are the 7 things to do when you're lost, and how to get home, or what not to do. I added an 8th one because actually in Benin, you really can't get lost. Even if you don't know where you are, you just follow a motorcycle track and you'll end up somewhere. But anyways, you don't really get lost there. You might not know where you are, but just follow a trail. It'll lead you somewhere. And you'll find someone somewhere. So they learned it, but then they added whatever to it. So then there's also 7 hacks or 7 rules for camping, like pick up after yourself, how to put the fire, and how far away to put it, and things like that. So they had to learn that as well. And then books of the Bible in order, another thing that you all have to know for Pathfinders and part of their program, and that's here as well. That's not just there. And also how to make a camp bed with logs and a sack. You just make a teepee, a tripod, and then you put your sticks through a sack and you sit them on the outside, and it makes a nice bed. Somebody actually tried it. We're like, no, you're going to break the sticks, because we didn't actually pick sticks that were going to support somebody. And then, of course, the famous thing, knot tying. So they had to learn 5 knots, do 5 knots, and learn a new one. And there's the kiddos that were there. And in the past, I don't know when, the E.G. White estate decided to put the Pitcairn game in French. So these are the ones that decided that they wanted to learn this honor. If you want an easy honor that you can do in just an hour or 2, this is it. Go online, look for the Pitcairn game. It's very fast. You can get this honor in like an hour if you have a good memory and if you know something. And you just have to get at least 200 points on this game, and then you can get this honor. So anyways, these are the ones that did it. I said they need to take a picture of themselves with their thing to prove that they actually got the thing, besides the fact that these guys all did it in my house and I was standing there when they did it. But anyways, this says the 2 Abrahams, they did it together, and then my Abraham also did it by himself. Now, one of the things that we've been working on is printing books and stuff, documents, brochures, and stuff like that. We have Ellen White books, but the French was written, 100 and some odd years ago, and the French from way back in those days is not the same French that people speak today, besides the fact that the French in the books is a very high French, where we speak a fairly low French, if you want to say that, and not such a high vocabulary. So when I moved to Natitingou, and Kit left the farm, we decided to bring the printing stuff with me so that I would be able to work on it while I was in Nati and deal with it there, since I had lovely electricity, where on the farm we actually only have solar panels and not that much. We have a generator that's supposed to run these things. And so we had to first fix the printer, get all the mousy food out of there. Most of it was chili, so it made you sneeze. And then re-wrap a lot of the wires that they chewed the plastic off. Thankfully, they didn't chew the wires, they just chewed the plastic. And then this is a paper cutter that's there, and this is a paper folder. All these are just kind of boring, but this is some of the documents we've been working with. The Great Controversy in French, which I have not moved forward with, since the church also decided to pass out Great Controversy at the same time, and they already had Great Controversy there already ready to pass out to people, so I didn't pursue that one right now, just because it's already out there right now, already done, so I didn't pursue that at all. So these are some of the booklets that we've been working on, Steps to Christ, in different versions and varieties. This is a Steps to Christ. If you know Steps to Jesus, which is an easier English version, I translated that into French, and that is a much better French version for people who don't have such a great high education to read. Thank you to whoever decided to make this program. deepl.com is a great program. It's an AI-based program, so it translates really well, and you can read the English and the French at the same time to make sure they're saying the same thing. And so it really is a nice one. You can see it here. It's a program where you can read the English and the French at the same time. So that's really helpful to make sure that it's actually translated properly. Every once in a while, it doesn't quite know what you said. And then I've also translated life sketches. It does not exist in French at all. It doesn't exist in a lot of languages, actually. So I've translated that, and it's going through one last edit before I get it out when I get back. And I'll be putting some images and stuff in it so that it becomes a little more interesting. And when you read it and go online and look up these things. Like, you want to know what the boat looked like that Ellen White was riding on to go to Australia? Look up the name. It's online. You can see a picture of it. Makes it a little more interesting. Anyways, here's Small Steps to Christ. I made a small brochure out of Steps to Christ. It's like an extract, so I took a little bit out of each chapter and put it together. People are not big readers there, and even the size of a Steps to Christ is difficult. This was the original text that I pulled out and ran it through. And then also a little brochure that Fidel wrote to pass out to people. We had to buy another stapler to staple books because the one that I had was so old that we couldn't find staples for it. So I had to buy a new one. We also rewrote a Bible study book. It's kind of like how to give Bible studies. We had one like 20 years ago, and everybody was like asking me if I still had it. I had mine, and like a couple other people still had theirs. But I had used it so much for Bible study that I'd rewritten it and put in my own verses and whatever that I felt were much more useful for where we're working, dealing with things that are not in the original document. So I rewrote it. It was, and you can see that it's got like Bible verses, like this is the truth of the real church, and this is the truth on death and these kind of things. So, and I put more questions in it so that it becomes not only a Bible teaching booklet, but also a Bible a booklet so that people can learn themselves. So that is why it's written, the Bible says, to try and avoid all the other books that are similar to that with similar names. So I was trying to find one that we don't already have a name for it in French. And here's just a layout for it. This is the original Steps to Christ in French that we have also printed out. If you want to look through them, they're in that one of the booklets, the folders out there on the table. Now I became a printer repairer because nobody wanted to repair my printer. So thanks to internet and YouTube, and thank you to the Indians who put them up online so that we can figure out how to fix our things. I can't understand them, but I can at least follow what they're doing. So anyways, it wasn't working, and we sent it down to Cotonou twice to get fixed, and it always came back, it still wasn't working. So then I looked online, they said, oh, you got to clean the magnetic bar. So I had to look online, how do you get the magnetic bar out? How do you clean that? So I found that out, so I cleaned the magnetic bar. This is a magnetic bar, and then put it back in, and it still wasn't doing great. So I kept working on it, and down south they said that they had already changed what we call the developer. And so I was like, well, I shouldn't need to change the developer again. Developer is like a magnetic powder that goes in there that helps mix with the toner so that it will stick to the paper. So they said they had already changed it, so I wasn't looking in that direction. So anyways, so now I went to one of the people that repairs printers, and I said, isn't there like mirrors or something in there that we need to clean? They're like, oh yeah, there is. So I came back and I started taking pictures and took it all apart again, opened it up, cleaned all the mirrors off. Still wasn't working very well. So anyways, this is like over a period of a couple months trying to get this thing to work. And so then I went back to the other guy, and he's like, it's got to be the developer. So we ordered developer, this stuff, powder stuff. It's not too much over there. Here it's more expensive, but over there it's only like $20 a bag. So we ordered 2 bags because we didn't know how much it was going to need. So when it came, I poured out what was in the printer on a big piece of paper, and I poured out the new developer on another piece of paper, and I was weighing it out to see if it's the same. So I had to put some from the second bag on there. Finally, the weight was the same, so I poured it back in to the printer here and worked. Printed stuff out. And it was nice and beautiful. That's how I printed out the stuff that's out there on the table. You can look at it. And I got those all out until that. Jamming. I took the whole thing apart again, still jamming. I don't know what the problem is. That's how I left it. So I came here and I just left it sitting that way, jamming. I don't know what its problem is. It might be the humidity. It might not be. I don't know. So it'll just sit there until I get back, and I'll see if when it dries out, if it works again. Because there's really no reason why it shouldn't work. Anyways, so that is sort of what I'm doing on my end, plus dealing with all the administration and everything with the project. And then Fidel is at the other part of the project in the Tangeta area, and he's working on the agro project activities up there. We have an ag project up there where we're doing different kinds of garden kind of stuff. And we have farming up there. This is part of the garden area that we have, and we drilled a well up there, deep well. I think it's something like 65 meters deep, and we run it with a solar pump so we can bring water up and water the garden. And you can see we have green peppers and stuff and all kinds of chilies. That is not what it looks like today, but that is what we've done in the past. We keep moving forward. And then, of course, we do a lot of corn. Here's our water tower, one of them. We have 2 of them like that. And we have the machines. You throw the corn in the top up there, and it goes, and out comes the corn, and out goes the husks. Very noisy. Here's one here. And if I could find out where I put the video file, we would listen to it, but I don't know where the video file is, so we won't be listening to it. But anyways, these are our machines. We have several of them, and they get rented out with a human to go to different areas, and they make money for the project. And they can be rented out, and in about a month or so, the corn will actually be ready and dry and ready to be hulled. Anyways, yeah, that's what it sounds like in your ears, and you're sitting beside it when you got to work. I didn't think it would work. I don't know how it found the file. Must have been embedded. Anyway, so then afterwards, we actually planted the banana trees and a bunch of papaya trees with green peppers in between. Yeah, don't mind all the weeds. And there's also water pipes, so drip irrigation, so that we can water it much easier and be a lot more efficient with water. We are in a very dry area. It's only rainy right now, rainy season. After that, we're running dry like it is here most of the year, even drier. Trees, everything gets brown. And we're down to between 10 and 4% humidity most of the time. And then in the springtime for here is when hot season is, and we're still dry, but now the temperature goes up to like what it was, 2 weeks ago? So we also built drying, whatever they call them, frames around the house. And these dry like okra and other stuff that we can use to sell and whatnot. We're still working on trying to get that to work properly. We did also a lot of chick projects where we bought some chicks and then worked on them. We had to make up our own things. You can see he's trying to put a light in. We had a little problem with all these lights. The first time we put them like hanging down like they should be, lasted like 5 minutes, and then the light was like, boom, inside. It fell out. It all just melted the plastic, and the plastic went poof. So then we were like, okay, fine. So we went back and we bought other ones that like have the metal socket thingies. And we put them in, and that lasted 5 minutes, because the screws actually screwed into plastic, so they still got too hot and fell out. So we're like, Argh! So then we tied them up on the side, hoping that if we put it on the side, the heat would rise and not make them fall out. It still lasted 5 minutes, and they fell out again. They're like, Argh! So this time I was like, okay, you're staying in there. So I tied them on with wire so they would stay on, and they finally stayed most of the time. Every once in a while you find a light bulb sitting on the bottom. But in any case, they finally worked. And then finally they were big enough they didn't need a light anymore, and the heat started up, so we didn't need it anymore. So then we decided we were going to make a homemade egg hatcher. So you take an old freezer and you get yourself a controller up here and set it for the right temperature. And then you stick a fan in there and you stick in light bulbs so that it will keep it the right temperature. And it worked fairly well. We also have, for the project, we have a herd of cows, which started, I think, with 11, and then they have progressively had babies, and we've traded off the bulls for the females, and they continued to get bigger. Now, another project that we just started was actually with the tractor. We got a tractor through the project, and it is right now working to plow fields. They pay about $70 per hectare to plow, and so that's been working. So Timothy is a friend of Fidel's. They've known each other since they were little, and he's been working. He's the one that's directing the project. You can see the tractor. It's not a big one, but it's big enough for what we want. We don't want something gigantic because the land is very rocky. You have to go around trees, you have to go over lumps and all kinds of things, and you need something you can actually control. If you have a big one, you can't control it very well. Another project that Fidel worked on was a soy project. That means he's using this project to help people raise money in their own villages and get money through raising crops, raising soy. And that worked really well. He uses it as an entrance into villages. So you're talking about hard ground today in Sabbath school, where the ground is really hard and things don't really grow. Well, ground in Benin, literally and spiritually, are very hard. And so to be able to get into these villages where the ground is very hard spiritually, we needed entrance. And so using a soy project is a great entrance into these projects. Now, we were able to, last time we were here, we were able to raise money enough to buy some vehicles because our vehicle had a rollover. And so we weren't able to have we only had this little blue one, which is fine. It's a personal one, it's not a project vehicle. And we always have these problems. This is like a regular occurrence, like every 2 weeks or sometimes several times a day. We have to change tires. So anyways, the truck was being overwhelmed by transporting lots of bags of corn and soy. So when we bought our vehicles, we actually had money left over, so we bought another vehicle that will help transport things better and also transport people or whatever needs to be transported. And it's a good old solid, used to be an ambulance, and then it became a camper, and then we finally got it. So when we arrived there, there was no buildings, no churches, no nothing going on. Not even in Tangeta, there was no churches, nothing. So we basically started from scratch when we were there, and that was in 2016 when we started. And now we have 6 different groups. This is Tangeta. This is the parent church, even though it's not the biggest. And this is Pafe and his family. They're the ones that take care of this church. They're not pastors, they're just evangelists. So our project pays them as evangelists and gets them there. We have Rebecca. Rebecca is there from Nigeria and Cameroon. So she's actually from Cameroon, but she lives in Nigeria. So she came and helped us for a year, and she'll be leaving in October. So she's helping a lot with women's ministry and that kind of thing. So this is the group in Tangeta. And we just had a baptism in Tangeta in 2024. And these two guys, these two guys. There's a little story behind them, and Fidel will come up here and explain their story.
Oui, ici, il s'agit de bienvenue.
So this is Bienvenue. That's his name.
Et Meda, les deux.
These two guys are Bienvenue and Meda.
Donc, ils sont malades.
They were sick.
Et c'est une maladie d'épilepsie.
So this was a sickness of epilepsy.
Et qui souffraient depuis leur enfance.
They had been suffering it from when they were children.
Donc, au cours de l'évangélisation, l'évangéliste s'est rendu dans leur maison.
So during evangelization in the houses, they came to their house.
Et il les a prêché l'évangile.
So they preached to them, they spoke to them about God.
Les deux sont devenus des amis.
Those two became friends.
Et ils ne sont pas de même famille.
But they aren't from the same family.
Parce que la société les a rejetés.
Because the society in general had rejected them because of their
Parce que
epilepsy.
les gens disent que leur maladie est contamineuse.
So the society said that their epilepsy they could be contaminated with it.
Et après, quand l'évangile les a invités à l'église,
So the evangelist invited them to church.
et il m'a expliqué leur cas.
And he explained to me their situation.
Et je lui ai proposé qu'on va leur faire une séance de prière de
So I said
délivrance.
we're going to do a time of prayer with them.
Donc, un sabbat que je suis au programme dans l'église de Tangueta.
So, just as a little side note, every Sabbath he's in one of the groups. He goes throughout the groups. So the
Et,
Sabbath that he was in Tangueta,
Après la prédication, l'évangéliste
preaching,
m'a sollicité à ce qu'on prie pour eux.
the evangelist asked him to pray with them.
Et au cours de la séance de prière, les esprits se sont manifestés.
When we were praying for them, the spirits manifested themselves,
Et le Seigneur les a délivrés.
and God delivered them,
Et ils sont rentrés dans leur bon sens.
and they became normal in their minds.
Et aujourd'hui, ils sont en bonne santé.
And today they're in good health,
Et il n'y a plus
and
d'épilepsie.
they have no more epilepsy.
Que Dieu soit loué.
As you all know, we have in the church, World Church does the 10 days of prayer, which we also do in our churches. And it's usually a fairly good time for miracles and other things happening during that time. And this is basically how we finish church. You go out and you make a big circle and everybody shakes everybody's hand. You know how like the pastors will line up? Well, as soon as you finish shaking hands with the pastor, you stand beside him, and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it makes a circle. In Tangueta, the women's ministry did help for some of the women, and they made a liquid soap, and you can see some of the ways that they're doing this. It's very liquid right now, but as it will sit overnight, it will actually become thick. Don't ask me why they're not. I wasn't there. And then they also made hard soap, like bar soap. And it's yellow because they actually use regular, like, cooking oil, but they also use red palm oil as well. And that's what makes it yellow. You stir and 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 stir until you're tired. But if you go to sleep, you wake up and it'll become a lump. So you have to keep stirring. So this is the jugs that we have of oil, and then they put in the caustic soda to make it work. It's a very simple soap: water, caustic soda, and oil. That's it. This is the kind of soap that is the cheapest over there for everybody. Some people know how to make it well. Others, when you buy it on the market, it's like furry, like a snowball, because they put too much caustic soda in it. So it just depends on who's teaching. We have another group in Kuntori. And Kuntori has had a lot of troubles, but they managed to come back. They had a lot of resistance through demons that were presenting themselves to people and telling them that you don't go to this church. But through a lot of prayer and fasting, the power of Satan was broken, and they were able to grow. And we have eight evangelists, Matthew, and then Isaiah also helps him along, and they're working in Kundori. In Nanegade is another group, and this is Andre and his family who work there, and they've been doing a good job there as well, with lots of other issues as well going on. Here's the group in Nanegade. And they had a baptism in 2023. Nanegade has a little issue that we have no water there unless it's rainy season, so we have to wait until this time of year before we can do a baptism, because otherwise there's no water in the river. And even when there is, it's a big muddy hole, and if you don't be careful, it's very, I guess it must have a lot of clay in it, because if you don't watch, you go, whew. The pastor took a baptism before he was ready to baptize, when he went in. And then there's quite a number of people in that church that also were dealing with it. As I said, you in Sabbath school, you were talking about hard ground with the thistles that have deep roots. Well, in their society, they have deep roots with Satan. And a lot of these things need to be dealt with, need to be prayed over, and really dealt with. You don't just ignore it, because otherwise it will go deeply. Oh, I have water there too. Yeah, thank you. I know my voice is going bye-bye, but that's all right. You just have to live with it. And then there's Tatonga. Tatonga is another group, and we have Charles and his family there. Whoops. Anyways, Charles and his family there. And this is the group that's there. They have a number of children there as well. We were trying to get the Pathfinder clubs to get started in those groups. And Tatonga also had a baptism here in May, right before he left. There's the group in Gwande. Gwande is yet another group. This one has gone through a couple evangelists because they keep leaving to go to seminary. So we have a group there now, and this is Basil and his wife. I've known Basil and his wife like when they were Pathfinder age. They grew up, and they have their kiddos, and they're the ones that are the direct evangelists in Gwande right now. And they had a baptism in 2023. And their baptism in 2024, here in May, just recently. Oi. Whoa, 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 whoa. Must have got stuck. I wasn't pushing the button. Okay, I don't know what we have to do. Restart it, and we'll flip through. My pushing button isn't doing anything.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes?
What causes the demon activity? What kind of religion do they have?
It's an animistic religion.
Okay, so like
ancestor worship. And ancestors are there to protect you. So you need to offer offerings to the ancestors so that they will protect you. Okay, there's 2004, 24. And we had one guy, Philip. He was in the church before, and then he kind of walked away, but he was rebaptized here in May. Where am I pointing this thing so it will actually point in the right direction? Over there? There? Well, it's not. Okay, so this is our evangelists and our workers here. You can see that we have a little crowd here. And they are the ones that we are paying to work as evangelists in our group. Now, every Monday, we get everybody together, and they have a Monday meeting where they go through like the Sabbath school lesson. They'll go through different issues that they have. They go through some teaching, making sure that they're going through the doctrinal beliefs and different things, how to apply it to the culture and that kind of thing. So there's lots of different things that they do during these meetings for Monday. And also, Fidel leads retreats for fasting and prayer, and then also for spiritual progress in each group. Usually every month they go to one group or another, and these groups will have this prayer time, 3 days of fasting and prayer in each group, and then they'll deal with issues. Sometimes they'll have to do some deliverance and whatever in those groups, depending on what's going on in those times. Now, you remember that money that we got for those vehicles? Well, there was still some money left over. So we were able to get motorcycles, 4 motorcycles for the evangelists. And those are the ones because they have to go quite a bit distance. Now, when we're talking groups, we're talking an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to their group from Tangeta. When I went up for a meeting in Gwande, it took me 3.5 hours from from Natitingou to get up there. We did a 3-hour meeting and we came back 3.5 hours. So it's a long ways, and it's a long distance, and it's all dirt road. Now, one of the things that we actually do for the district is 13 Sabbath celebrations. That means that on the 13th Sabbath, usually one time of year, we used to do it like every quarter, but it became really a headache. So we only do it once a year, and we do a 13th Sabbath celebration where the group, all the groups will get together in just like a time of a mini one-day camp meeting or 2-day camp meeting kind of thing. And they like to have a fabric that's the same for everybody. So they'll choose out a fabric, and everybody gets their fabric and takes it to the seamstress or the tailor, and they get their clothes sewn up so that they have their special clothing for that 13th Sabbath. So you can see there's 2 different kinds there that people sewed up. Sometimes there's just not, the quantity of one type is not enough for everybody, so they have to choose a different color. And then we also had one in 2023, and they actually made t-shirts for that, so that everybody had a t-shirt from that 13th Sabbath. This was our evangelist. That was before in Gwande, and he finally had his dream fulfilled to go to school. We were going to send him to Cameroon, but visas and plane tickets were way too expensive for him and all his family, so we sent him to Babcock University in Nigeria. So this is them leaving. And there they are there. And right before he left, Fidel will tell you this story and explain a little bit more about what happened here during this time. This was right before he left, somewhere in November or December. And si tu peux expliquer un peu ce qui s'est passé là.
Et ici, c'est le vieux Nouati, le délégué du village de Gwande.
So this was the old Nuante, and he was like the chief of the village sort of thing. Not really a chief, but the chosen one by the government to take care of the village.
Et quand j'étais allé dans le village là pour prêcher l'évangile, premièrement, donc j'étais allé le voir.
So when I went to the Gwande, the village, very first time before there was a group there, I went to see him first.
Et je l'avais évangélisé.
And I talked to him about God.
Et il m'a dit de commencer, après il va venir.
He said, continue your things and I'll think about it.
Et ça fait déjà quelque chose de 6 ans, 7 ans.
So that was like 7 years now.
Donc il était malade.
So he was sick now.
Et son fils a donné sa vie à Christ.
So his son, David,
et il a été formé, il est évangéliste, maintenant il est au séminaire
he was
pastoral.
the evangelist and is the one that's gone to seminary.
Et depuis un bon temps, le diable avait divisé cette famille
So for a long time, Satan had divided this family.
parce que la maman avait donné sa vie à Christ.
So because the mother had given her life to Christ
Et le papa s'opposait.
and the father didn't want it.
Et le foyer était divisé.
So the house was separated.
Donc quand il était malade, j'étais
So when
allé
he was
vraiment l'exhorter
I went and encouraged him.
et les réconcilier avec la maman.
I encouraged them to be reconciled with his wife.
C'était une journée formidable.
So this was a great day.
Et il s'est engagé
He decided that he
à donner sa vie
was
à
giving his
Christ.
life to Christ.
Et il a promis venir à l'église.
So he promised that he would give that he would come to church the next Sabbath.
Et le sabbat prochain et le vendredi, donc la veille, il est décédé.
So and they were reconciled together, and the whole family was really touched.
Donc
And
c'était le
then Friday, he was supposed to come to church that evening to the Vespers program, but he already died.
Donc c'est le jour de son enterrement ici.
So
Donc
this
on
was
était allé
the
le voir.
day of his burial.
Et ce jour, tous les évangélistes, nous étions là-bas, on a formé 3 équipes et nous avons évangélisé tous les villages.
So during that time, we invited all the evangelists to come to the village to support David, but also to do evangelization because he was the big guy of the village. There was going to be lots of people from other villages coming in, and it would be a great time to do evangelization. So they made 3 groups of people who were going to go out and do evangelization.
Et plusieurs donnent leur vie à Christ. Ceux qui sont prêts, c'est les 15 là qu'ils ont baptisés
So many people
le
gave their
mois
lives to
passé.
Christ, and a number of those people are the ones that got baptized here in May. There's also a lot of deliverance ministry going on when people want to be delivered. Sometimes, as in the guy who came to the church and asked Christ to, what's he doing there or whatever, Christ was able to read his heart and do that. He wanted actually to be delivered, even though he wasn't able to say it to himself. In general, if people come to us and ask, we do prayer and deliverance, and also fasting and prayer for certain of them really need a lot more time than others, depending on how deep their roots are in the hard ground. This lady here, she was involved with sorcery for years, and we prayed for her several times. And finally, just this past year, she decided that she wants nothing more to do with sorcery, and she's done with it, and she gave her life completely over to Christ now. And she is being a big asset for Christ and bringing other women in now that they see that they can be freed and they don't need to be afraid of sorcery, because sorcery in church is a big thing. The women come in, they're scared to get out of sorcery because they're afraid that the other women will attack them. So it's a big thing that we have to deal with, this, if you call it hard dirt, that's in the society that we have to deal with in that sense. Now, this is a young child. Fidel will tell you this story.
Et ici, c'est Monica.
This girl's name is Monica.
C'est une fillette de 11 ans.
She is
Vrai?
11 years old.
Elle a été initiée dans la sorcellerie.
She was initiated into sorcery by her grandma,
Et pour pouvoir rendre sa tante malade.
so that she would be able to make her
Et
her aunt, be sick.
la tante est vraiment malade.
And her aunt was really sick all the
Et
time.
pendant 2 ans.
For 2 years, she was
Et
really ill all the time.
Elle souffrait de rhumatisme, la maladie qui est dans les os.
So she had rheumatism and sickle cell.
Donc nous étions allés là-bas prier pour elle
So we went and we prayed for the aunt,
et elle se sentait mieux.
and she really felt much better.
Et elle a retrouvé sa santé.
And she got her health back, and her husband was using all his money at the beginning of every month just to take her and the kids to the hospital all the time.
Donc ils ont fait, le mari a dépensé beaucoup.
And her husband, he used all his money.
Pendant 2 ans, toute son économie est finie, il ne
For
sait plus
2
quoi faire.
years, every time the money would come in, it would end up at the hospital.
Et si ça se passe comme ça, tu n'as plus rien, les gens te proposent d'aller chez les féticheurs, ben, il est en
When you
Christ.
don't have any more money, people will say, well, you can go to this fetish, or you can go to that fetish, and they'll help you find money.
Donc nous étions allés là-bas, nous avons prié sérieusement pour elle.
So we prayed seriously for the aunt,
Le Seigneur a intervenu
and God intervened in her life,
et le lendemain, elle s'est levée.
and she got up without any problems the next day, with no more pain and no more problems.
1 mois plus tard,
1 month later,
j'avais le programme dans l'église là et j'étais venu pour prêcher.
it was my turn to preach in that church.
Et après la prédication,
After the prayer,
la petite a demandé à me parler.
this little girl, she came and said she wanted to talk to me.
Et j'ai appelé le dirigeant
So I called the other directors of the church,
et je l'ai écoutée.
and we listened to her.
Et quand elle a commencé à parler, j'ai su que bon, elle est initiée dans la sorcellerie.
So when she was speaking, I understood that she had been initiated into sorcery.
Le diable se manifeste selon la culture de chaque milieu.
So Satan works in specific ways in each culture.
Donc, je lui ai posé la question, qui lui a mis dedans?
So I asked her, who initiated you into sorcery?
Donc, elle sait que je l'ai déjà découvert, elle a accepté.
So she understood that I had understood what she had been doing,
Et nous avons prié pour elle.
and she wanted to be prayed for.
Et
So we
les
prayed for
esprits
her.
là se sont manifestés, elle est délivrée.
And the spirits manifested themselves, and then they left.
Donc, voilà comment l'ennemi fait. Et quand il va chez la personne, il veut attaquer la personne directement, il n'a pas pu, il passe par une personne interposée qui est plus proche de la personne.
So because her aunt was a member of the church, the sorcery couldn't attack directly. So they passed by her niece to attack her.
C'est un défi que nous rencontrons
So
toujours
it's
sur
a
le
big
terrain.
challenge that we meet up with all the time.
Mais nous sommes plus que vainqueurs par celui qui nous a
We are
beaucoup aimés.
more than vanquer. What is vanquer in English? We're more than
Winner.
winners over Satan by Jesus Christ. Conquerors, thank you.
Amen. Ok, c'est bien.
Yes.
Can you always tell when the sorcery is happening, when the devil is really working?
Well, these people become possessed by this spirit. And so there are certain ways of telling by people talking and what they dream and different ways that they act. And usually when they're dreaming and they've gone on a trip and during their dream or something, it's usually a sign that that's there. We do not pray for people who don't want to be prayed for because otherwise they come back to attack you. And we've been under attack ourselves many, many times after praying for people.
Oui, bon, c'est culturel, les gens l'utilisaient dans le temps pour protéger leur maison. Bon, maintenant, c'est pour faire le mal, quoi.
So before, people used a lot of this stuff for protecting their houses and whatnot. Now people use it a lot to cause harm to other people.
Donc voilà.
So it exists in this country as well. It's just here people would call it I'm a witch, and there's probably a lot of people that are included in it that they don't know that they are involved with it, and it can be very subtle. You probably would know by looking at her that there was a problem. She has been to church many times before she became initiated. But don't assume that because someone's a child that they cannot be possessed. They can.
Donc c'est ce qu'il dit, mais le diable ne protège jamais contre le diable, c'est de l'heure.
They always say
C'est un
that,
mensonge.
well, if we do this, then we'll be protected against whatever Satan brings towards us or whatever, some other demon. But actually, you can't protect yourself by staying with Satan, so it just kind of all works with each other. And they kind of communicate with each other, so like if there's someone who's a healer that uses Satan to heal, and the sorcery is trying to kill somebody, he's like, wait for me to finish my thing there so that I can do my thing. So they'll communicate with each other. They become like a big spider web of communication between the spirits so that they can work together. Now, what we're going to do, we have a young man that we have been working with. Tu vas raconter sur Bona.
Oui, Bonaventure, c'est un jeune qui a été rejeté par sa famille après avoir donné sa vie à Christ quand j'étais allé dans leur village pour prêcher l'évangile.
Donc, Bonaventure is a young guy who's been living with us for the past 4 years or so, and he was rejected by his family when he became a Christian, and he's been living with us and being basically one of our young people or one of our kids.
Donc ils ont dit que bon, s'il a choisi, s'il va à l'église, il ne peut plus aller à l'école.
So they told him, well, if you want to go to church, then you can't go to school.
Et s'il veut aller à l'école, il ne peut plus aller à l'église.
So if you want to go to school, then you can't go to church.
Donc de choisir un, il a dit qu'il a choisi les deux.
So choose one or the other. He said, no, I'm choosing both.
Donc le papa a dit bon, maintenant tu ne peux plus rester chez moi.
So the father said, no, you're not going to stay with me anymore.
Donc nous l'avons repris.
So we took him into our home.
Donc il allait à l'église, il a déjà donné sa vie à Christ, donc il allait à l'église, donc il était en troisième quand nous l'avons repris.
So he was already in troisième. What is troisième?
Quatrième année au collège.
Somewhere around
Quatrième année, quoi. 4 ans.
10th grade.
Donc
10th grade. He was in 10th grade when he came to our house.
Quand il est venu, donc je l'ai formé comment
Good.
se préparer pour servir Dieu.
So we prepared him to serve God. So we're going to watch a video on him, and then we are going to be finished. If anybody has questions, we can see them when we're done with the video.
Apprendre à étudier la Bible, à méditer, et aujourd'hui, bon, il dirige l'école de sabbat,
So
il
today
peut
he's the
prêcher à
one that
l'église,
leads the Pathfinders, and he leads the Sabbath school in the church.
et il a le bac cette année.
And he finally finished school this year.
Donc le Seigneur l'a transformé vraiment, c'est vraiment
So God
formidable.
has really
Adventist
transformed
church
him. Here's
came
his
to my
story.
village. Nobody knew what it was and how it could survive. All other churches that came were driven away by our village spirits. We don't tolerate any other church or religion here. The enemy spirit keeps this place a stronghold. When the Adventist church came, we laughed at the fact that this one worshipped on a Saturday. However, there was something that fascinated me about it. One Sabbath, when I was there, the evangelist of the church was also there, and he spotted me and started asking me questions. He invited me to come worship with them the next Sabbath. I was intimidated because he was a big man. Nevertheless, I decided to go more often. Ultimately, he convinced me to come for Bible studies every Sunday. My father was not happy that I started going to this new Adventist church. He is a devout man to traditions, but my dad could see that my life was changing. The biggest change was I no longer worshiped the fetishes and spirits and no longer ate the food offered to them. I slowly gave up all the traditions that gripped us. My father was furious, and he told me that I could no longer eat in his house. He also burnt my rice field, which was a way of making money. Because of that, I couldn't sell any crops for money. Ultimately, I dropped out of school because I couldn't afford it. Because of my new convictions, it felt like my life was getting worse when I thought it would get better. Sometimes doubt would creep in. I prayed and prayed to God for help. Sure enough, my prayers were heard. One day, I met an evangelist named Fidel who came to my village. He was a kind man and took interest in me when he saw me in church. He heard my story and invited me to stay with his family in his village. Here, I'm at peace. I'm learning how to be a disciple of Jesus through the different activities of life. It is hard to be a Christian whilst living with my family. I choose to be a Christian because I see that Jesus is turning me into a better person. Day by day, I become happier. Even though it took sacrifices and loss in certain areas of life, this is what I truly wanted. I want to say thank you to Fidel for helping me, for encouraging me, and for finding a way for me to go to school again. And ultimately, I thank God for answering my prayers and for watching over me and leading me on this journey. I look forward to seeing what the future holds.
You mentioned that the spirits manifest themselves, so when they're about to be expelled or whatever it is, how is that? I mean,
It depends on the spirit. I mean, it depends on which one is in there. They might yell, they might scream, they might try to vomit, they might roll on the floor, they might arch their back. There's many different ways that they do it. It just depends on which spirit is in it. If they have a spirit of the snake, they might be going like this on the floor. It just depends on what it is. Sometimes they don't say anything. Sometimes you just leave and they don't say anything. It just depends on how deeply attached they are. And They might try to talk with a different voice that isn't their normal voice. Last time we were here, we showed some videos, and I guess it screwed up some people, so we don't show those anymore. But in any case, but yeah, we've had quite a bit of things. The thing is that, I mean, if you're praying for people and you know that they're possessed, stay back, keep your eyes open when you're praying, because the spirits can do all kinds of things when you're praying. And if you actually know that the person is possessed, don't touch them right away until you've actually prayed, first of all. And then Mark 16 verses 17 to 18 says that we as Christians who have accepted Christ have the authority over Satan. And we take that to heart. We do not do it like other Protestant churches do, but we do take it to heart and claim the promises of God and take authority over Satan, that he will leave because we have said so. It's like a policeman has authority because the state has given him authority. We are Christians, have that authority. Those who have believed will have the authority over the demons, not because of our own strength, but because of the strength of God.
Thank you.
How did Fidel become a Christian?
Well, his family was Protestant, Pentecostal when he grew up that way. And then he became with another group that's called CMC. We don't have that here. But the guy who started the group started it up in Cameroon, and that group basically went back to the roots of Christianity. And then they started, the person who actually wrote the books for his church, the church that he was in, actually used Ellen White books to write. So basically, if you read it, it's like Ellen White put into a way that it's more step version. So it's actually pretty good books. We still use some of them. And then when he came into Natitingou, he was there. We've known each other like 7 years before we ever got married. And he lived next door to a couple of the guys from church, brothers from church in Nati. So they would talk to him, and they talked back and forth. And he was more literate in Ellen White books than the members of the Adventist church before he became a member. So his only problem was the problem with the Sabbath. He wasn't convinced yet. And so he was reading Miraculous Answers to Prayer or something like that. I think it's the Marked Bible in English. And anyway, so he was reading through it, and the Holy Spirit just convicted him that the Sabbath was truth. So then he went through Bible studies and became an Adventist. So anyways, I think that answers your question. One more question? Yes?
You mentioned about lay evangelists of the motorbikes. Are they hired by AFM, and how much are they paid in dollars?
Yes, they are hired through our project, through AFM, so we have to raise money for their salaries as well, not only for our own life, but also for them. And they get about $210 a month, about. That's with the exchange rate, depending on what it is at the point, but somewhere around there. We start them off lower, but if they show that they're good evangelists and they keep on it, then they get a raise a little bit later. Okay, so I think we're done with questions for the moment. If anybody has a specific question, we'll be out there in the foyer, and then we'll just stop now. If anybody has any more questions, we can continue out there. Are we singing first before we pray?
No, I did the prayer.
Okay, I'm going to pray. So Fidel will pray for us in French. Let's pray.
Seigneur, notre Père, notre Dieu, nous te disons merci. Nous te sommes très reconnaissants pour ce moment très opportun que tu nous as accordé. Merci pour les témoignages partagés. Merci pour ton peuple. Merci, Seigneur, pour tout. Nous voudrions, Seigneur, nous confier à toi, afin que, Seigneur, tu nous conduis dans nos demeures respectives. Viens nous garder, nous protéger ce sabbat et bénis tout chacun de nous. Dans le nom de Jésus, nous avons prié. Amen.
Amen.
Merci beaucoup.
De rien.